Hamburg, July 1943. British and U.S. Air Forces launch Operation Gomorrah, carpet bombing the city for a week. Their aim, to destroy Hamburg, demoralize German civilians, and cripple the Nazis. One target is the Church of St. Nicholas, the tallest tower in the city. Operation Gomorrah changed the face of Hamburg forever. Tens of thousands of people died. Countless others were scarred for life. 70 years later, St. Nicholas still stands in ruins. It's been left this way as a memorial to the bombings and a reminder of the firestorm, as it's become known, that swept Hamburg from July 24th to August 3rd, 1943. How long can a war last when it's already over? Helga Abendschön was 18 years old when the bombs fell. She came away severely injured, but both her mother and brother were killed. It's the first time she's come to see the church. I'm happy to be able to see this today, she says, to know that I'm not alone. Of course, when July comes every year, it's not so easy for me.
Auch nicht so ganz einfach.
Helga Abendschön has led a fulfilling adult life despite her early trauma. But as she's grown older, memories of the bombings have come back to haunt her. The horrors of her youth are more and more present in her mind. From the observation tower of St. Nicholas, every view of the city is different than when Helga was a child. It's a glimpse into the destructive power of war. Ham is the city district where Helga Abendschön lived until the air raid. She says, the air raid warden came and asked, "Who do we have here?" Because I was trembling so much. My mother said, "This is our Helga." It's the last thing I heard my mother say.
Das ist das Letzte, was ich von meiner Mutter gehört habe.
Operation Gomorrah left at least 35,000 people dead. Most were women and children. Many burned to death in their homes or in the streets. Others suffocated in air raid shelters. A dry spell before the bombing had turned Hamburg to a tinderbox. The firestorm ripped through the city at hurricane speed. When the smoke cleared, this is what was left of the Abendschön's apartment building. Today, newer buildings have taken its place. The once lively neighborhoods like Ham, or this district, Hammerbrück, were wiped out. Today, rows of glass-walled office buildings stretch on here, block after block. Still, Hamburg remains one of the most beautiful cities in the world, according to Birger Vetter. He shows us around the city. The firestorm of 1943 plays a central part in Birger's family history.
Als ich noch ein kleines Kind war.
Birger remembers that even when he was a small child, his grandmother's memories loomed large at family get-togethers. Whether it was Christmas or Easter, he says, the story of the bombings was told time and again.
Sehr oft erzählt wurde.
Researchers have shown that wartime trauma can be passed down through generations, even to the grandchildren of survivors. Birger Vetter participated in a study on the subject. Ever since then, he's been passionate about his city's past. He takes us to the Ham District Archive. Photos and documents tell the story of a neighborhood changed forever. Helga Hunter is one of the volunteers who help run the archive. She was working in air defense when the Allies flew in. That saved her life. All her neighbors died in air raid shelters. Helga Hunter was 16 years old. A photo of the appliance store where Hunter worked as a teenager reminds her of what once was.
Oh Mann.
After the war, the store was gone. Only in the past few years has Hunter been able to speak about her experiences. I was lucky, she says. I went and stood at the entrance of the building. I was looking for my parents. I was trying to get home, but it wasn't possible. The people on the street were just falling over. They breathed in the hot air and they were dead. These days, it's hard to believe. There were others who just got sucked into the air. Back then, some of the streets were paved with asphalt. Others were still stone. But on the asphalt streets, the asphalt boiled. The people who walked into it died a miserable death. You couldn't get them out because you couldn't go in and help them. So they died wretched deaths in the boiling asphalt. These are the things that happened. You just can't imagine. Before and after. These are the streets Helga grew up on. A journey through time into Birger Vetter's family history. Birger's mother, Kirsten, was a young child at the time of the firestorm. She was with her mother, Birger's grandmother, when the bomb struck. Birger's grandmother wrote an account of the events shortly before she died. We were trapped in the apartment, she wrote. I was terrified my children and I might be burned alive. Birger's grandfather saved the whole family from the burning building. He tied together bed sheets and curtains and lowered them down 3 stories from their apartment window. If it weren't for what he did, Birger would never have been born.
Das ist der Opa-Latendorf.
Das ist der Kapitän oder der Marinemensch.
Genau der uns.
Birger's mother, Kirsten, still admires her father's courage. She calls him a hero. Passing the Tower of St. Nicholas once again, we drive to the district of Altona. Were the Allies right to bomb Hamburg? It's a question Birger and others in his generation ponder.
Also ich bin nicht froh, dass es die Flächenbombardements
He
gab.
tells us he's not glad Hamburg was carpet-bombed, but he is glad the Allies went to war against Hitler and that they won the war, even at such a high cost. Otherwise, he says, he would have grown up under a dictatorship.
Aufgewachsen.
We turn onto Suttnerstraße, the street where it all happened. Altona didn't suffer the kind of damage seen in Hamm or Hammerbrück, but empty spaces still testify to the war.
Hier standen die Häuser.
There used to be buildings here, Kirsten Vetter tells Birger. We used to come down this way when we were kids. I was just 4, but I remember it clearly. The bombardment scarred the psyches of even some of the youngest survivors. But until just a few years ago, the bombing was a taboo subject. Germans accepted that their country was to blame for the war. The suffering of German civilians wasn't discussed openly. That's one reason it's been so hard for people to cope with the past and overcome their trauma.
Vor Feuer habe ich Angst.
Birger's mother said she's still afraid of fire and that she would never consider moving into the top floor of an apartment building. A few floors up, maybe, but no higher. It was horrifying looking down below, Birger's grandmother wrote. The air was filled with phosphorus and smoke. Birger's grandmother didn't return to Suttnerstraße until shortly before she died. She wanted to show her grandson the street where it all happened. Many survivors now feel the need to share their experiences. Helga Abendschön is one of them.
Danke. Oder geben Sie mir noch mal Ihre Hand. Aber hier kommt kein Absatz mehr.
Back at St. Nicholas Church, an exhibition is set to open in the basement vault. Architect Gerhard Hirschfeld's family also lived through the firestorm. He shows Helga Abendschön the development of the project. This is where the exhibit will be, he says. The concept is based around the story of the church itself. St. Nicholas's history is very closely tied to the history of the city. Everything the church suffered through Hamburg suffered through as well.
Miterleiden müssen, die Hamburg auch erlitten hat.
Gerhard Hirschfeld belongs to an association of St. Nicholas patrons. The group especially hopes young people will visit the exhibition. Films, photos, and personal belongings from survivors, such as letters and clothing, help bring the story to life. Helga Abendschön thinks it's an excellent idea. She says what's most important is that this sort of violence never happens again. During her visit, the chimer plays St. Nicholas's bells just for her. It's a rare thing for German war survivors to receive this much attention. After the air raid, she says, I was in a hospital room with 12 beds. Visitors came to see everyone, except for me. There was no one left to visit me. It would have been nice to have someone to stroke my head and tell me everything was going to be all right.
Einmal über den Kopf streichen und sagen, es wird wieder gut. Hat schon was gebracht. Ja.
Even today, 70 years later, when she thinks back, Helga Abendschön feels terribly alone. The survivors of Hamburg's firestorm are living proof that war is never just. And even after all weapons have been laid down, war goes on in the minds and hearts of its survivors for generations.